I also have to understand that my values aren't necessarily everybody else's values. And I can't walk in this world where everybody else is right or everybody else is wrong just because we aren't in alignment on what we want to accomplish.
Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, a Ben Kinney training production, where we discuss the concepts of health, wealth, leadership, and legacy. My name is Chad Himes, and I am joined by my friend Bob Stewart. Bob, what's our word for today?
Chad, today's word is blind spots.
Blind spots. All right, Bob, before you tell us a little bit more about that, I want to start this episode off and let everybody know what's coming. Now, in our last episode, we did an overview with Ben about emotional intelligence, and he shared with us all the different pieces that make up emotional intelligence. And we realized that there was just so much there, Bob, we had to go deeper on each one. So we're calling this Part 2 of a 6-part series as we dive into emotional intelligence and self-awareness. Now, Bob, as everyone's listening to today's episode, you mentioned blind spots. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, self-awareness is the topic, and I don't know that we actually use the word blind spots, Chad, inside of this discussion, but as Ben starts to unpack self-awareness, you realize that you have an impact on other people, a big impact on your organization, especially as a leader. And so I want people to pay attention to kind of this idea that inside of your self-awareness, you have a lot of blind spots. And the more we can do to kind of understand what those are, discover those, and really try to do something about those blind spots, I think the stronger leader we're going to become. So blind spots is my word, even though I don't think it actually is said in the podcast.
Well, that's all right, because it's a great concept that everyone should be paying attention to. Everybody, we hope you enjoy this part with Ben Kinney. Okay, Ben, we talked about emotional intelligence in an overview. You took us through all of the steps of emotional intelligence, what those 5 pieces were, and we want to dive deeper. So which one do you want to talk about on this episode?
Let's start with the first one that we mentioned in the last episode, which was self-awareness.
Okay, so give us that definition one more time of self-awareness for anybody who maybe missed it or doesn't remember what it was. Break that down again for us.
Yeah, I'll just use the Harvard Business Review's definition because they were the first ones, as I said, that introduced me to the subject. But self-awareness is knowing one's strengths, knowing one's weaknesses, knowing one's drives, values, and most importantly, their impact on others. How is our gifts, our strengths, right, and our faults, our weaknesses, the things that we want to accomplish in the world, our drives, what we believe is right and wrong, our values, right? How are those things positively or negatively impacting others or impacting your whole organization?
Okay, so let's put you on the spot because we don't necessarily need to make you comfortable. We just want to get some authentic answers out of you here, Ben, and help everybody grow from it. Let's break that down. Tell me your strength. Tell me a strength. Tell me a weakness. Tell me your values. Let's dive right into it. So what's a strength of yours?
Bench press.
Lies.
Right. Bench press and knowing how to find a good cheeseburger. Great.
It's not yoga.
No, that's the weakness for you. All right, let's get to it though. In leadership, let me narrow my question down maybe a little bit for you. In leadership, Ben, what's one of your strengths?
I move fast and I get results.
Okay.
In fact, I actually think that's a leader's job, is leaders get results. There's always downsides to that too.
So let's flip that coin and look at it. What's the weakness that you have in your leadership roles?
I move fast.
Yeah.
And I'm impatient.
Okay.
And I have to understand when it comes to being a self-aware leader, how is that affecting my company? How is that affecting my people? How is that affecting our goals?
So let's deal with the strength.
Not the bench press part.
Yeah, not that you get results. How does that show up potentially impacting other people in your world?
I'd say one way is I'm very results oriented. And once I get a result, I'm normally thinking about the next result. And I don't take the time for my team to sit back and say, gosh, look what we just accomplished. I'm up at the top of the mountain. I'm looking around and I say, oh my gosh, there's a bigger mountain. right?
Let's go get the next one.
Yeah, and they're all looking around and say, does he even care about what we just accomplished?
Right. We've been working to climb this one.
We've been working on this for 3 months or 6 months or for a year or for a day or whatever it is. Like, does he not appreciate that? Does he always want more and more and more and more? And that people look around and my strengths now become a weakness in my leadership because I'm so results oriented, right? Or I'm so impatient. I want things yesterday, right? And I'm just kind of wired that way. What I had to understand as a leader, I can be wired internally like that, but I can't always allow it to show up in my company or show up in my leadership or show up in my communications because it's going to steal the morale of my company.
How do you mitigate that then? Like if you're just naturally somebody that's always looking for results, and when you get the result, you're just on to the next result. How do you mitigate that so that it minimizes the impact on others?
Well, you got to come up with models and systems for yourself to do that. But one way would be thinking about the next day, the night before, and just saying, all right, what are we going to accomplish? Who do I need to recognize tomorrow? Who do I need to thank? Who do I need to compliment, right? Who do I need to have a conversation with, right? And what can we celebrate? Is there something tomorrow that we as a team can look at each other and say, hey, we're winning, let's celebrate? Because we all have a strong desire to celebrate wins. Some of us just want to do it a little bit longer than other people. So that might be one thing. Another way, Bob, is you come up with systems to a weakness like impatience.
So what does that look like? Because I'm imagining more than half of our listeners are impatient.
I'm imagining that over half of our listeners are probably married. And gentlemen, I know both of you are. When your wife has a grievance and she starts talking to you about what she wants to communicate, our natural response is to say, I know how you feel, but you are actually wrong, and I can prove it. And how does that work out?
Horribly.
It doesn't work out. Right? It doesn't work. But we can prove them wrong.
Right.
Right? Our desire to be right actually in the end makes us wrong, right? What do they actually want from us?
They want to be heard, probably.
They want to be heard. Do you think that's any different in business?
No.
An employee that has a grievance, don't you think they want the same thing?
Yeah.
An employee that has an idea, an employee that has a concern, right? They want to be heard. Now, you ever been in a situation when somebody's talking and you have an idea popping in your head about what they just said, and we impulsively want to respond, that brings up something else, and we're interrupting what they were there for, right? I come up with models around that so I don't do it. Here'd be an example. I take a piece of paper and a Sharpie, and when you say, hey, I have a grievance, I sit down and say, all right, would it be okay if I take notes? And then I just start writing down everything you say. And you might think it's for you. It's for me, so I don't talk. My goal is to take notes until you've said everything that you wanted to say.
You often do what else?
Yeah.
Right? Anything else?
Yeah.
Like you're constantly pulling that out of people.
How did that make you feel? I'm sorry I did that. Tell me more. What else have I done? I was completely unaware, right? What else? What else? And by the time the whole situation is done, how do you feel, Bob?
Heard, right? I mean, I feel like I've emptied it all out there.
Yeah, you've taken the resentment out of your body and you've put it somewhere else, right? Do you think that would work better in your relationships?
Yeah.
Every time your spouse has a grievance, you get out a piece of paper or a notebook and you say, would it be okay if I take notes? And you just take notes and listen to what they said?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
My wife would wonder what's wrong all of a sudden.
Right. Mine too. She'd probably think something was amiss, but yeah.
But it'd be life-changing.
It would. I think
Yes.
she'd feel heard, right?
My natural weakness is impatience, and I don't want to spend all that time listening. And if I don't come up with a model, I'm going to interrupt them.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to rush to try to solve it very quickly, when really that's not what they're there for. They're here to listen to. So by me implementing a system like a Sharpie and a piece of paper and just taking notes, I'm able, right, to mitigate my negative impact on other people.
Okay. That's an amazing system to have. Now, I know you don't always have pen and paper. You might be caught. Someone might catch you in the hall. Someone might just catch you on a conversation. You're just somewhere you don't have pen and paper. What do you do in that situation, Ben? Because I think we need to stay on this impatience thing, because again, we have a lot of people that are listening to this podcast that have no patience. They're in that same problem you're in.
Well, knowing one's strengths, weaknesses, drives, values, and impact on others. If somebody caught me at a time when I actually physically didn't have time to listen, or I was physically, like, I hadn't eaten, I was grumpy, I was in a bad mood, like it wasn't the right time, it's up to me, if I was self-aware, to go back to that person and say, Chad, I understand that you have something really important you want to talk to me about, and I want you to feel heard. Unfortunately, I only have 5 minutes today, and I feel like this is something I'd like to invest some more time in. Would it be okay if we scheduled some time tomorrow and we met first thing? And I'm going to come in fresh tomorrow, rested, fed, right, with some time to like calm down and not just respond. And I'll have a much better conversation because I understand that if I do it today, I'm going to have a negative impact on that relationship.
So sometimes it's pushing the conversation off to a better time because you know that that's how you're going to be.
Yep.
Okay. So Ben, talk about your values a little bit. That's part of the definition here you have of self-awareness. I mean, there's so many things that drive you. We've talked about that in some other episodes. We can dive into them again. Yet talk about some of your values that are in here and how they impact others.
Well, in our company, our values are hard work, extraordinary results through systems, accountable in all things, leaders only, teamwork, and humble. And I have to understand that I operate based on those values. And those things could have a very positive or a very negative impact on other people. Like I have zero tolerance for unaccountable people. I have zero tolerance for people that don't want to work with systems, or for arrogant people, or for people that aren't team players. I also have to understand that my values aren't necessarily everybody else's values. And I can't walk in this world where everybody else is right or everybody else is wrong just because we aren't in alignment on what we want to accomplish. That showed up in my career a lot with like the word drives, where I would say, well, don't you want to be like me? Don't you want to do this? Don't you want to make this much money? Don't you want to accomplish this? The reality is a lot of people don't. And I had to not make it about them being me. I had to make it about them accomplishing their goals, their things that they wanted in life. I had to understand that my high drive to work a lot of hours or work hard or build businesses isn't going to be present in all of my people. Because of that, I have to approach those other people in my organization in a different way because I'll have a negative impact on them.
So you can't judge your level of, well, let's just take the first one. You said hard work. Right? You can't judge your level of hard work to their level of hard work.
Right.
Because your hard work is, and from knowing you for all these years, that's all day, that's just working, that's nonstop, that's powering through it. There's other people who they're going to give you their best, and at 5 o'clock the day's over.
Yeah, and it was easy for me to say, well, what the heck, isn't that? Are you a part timer? And they probably gave me 50 hours or something that week, right? They're go above and beyond, but I'm just at that different level, and I would diminish their contributions by trying to compare their drives to my drives.
I've heard somebody said, I saw this recently, this idea that like, I think Gary Vaynerchuk, but like, don't be surprised your employees aren't working as hard as you. It's not their business, right? So you have to give that leeway to those people that they're working pretty darn hard. It might not be kind of that level you're at, but understanding your impact on them when you come in and say, well, you're not around at 7 o'clock or whatever. Like, you really have to take all of that into account.
Yeah. A strength in our organization, Bob, might be that I have some sales skills. And it'd be easy for me to teach somebody a script. But what I didn't understand is that I have to be aware that it's not just the script that makes us successful. It's the fact that I know how to change my tonality and to smile or to take 5 steps back from the door that I just knocked on, right? Or to match their volume. Like there's all these other things that are natural strengths for me, right? Which might be hard for me to explain to others. So where that comes into emotional intelligence is not that I have those skills and they don't. It's that I have to understand that my sales skills are 20 years in the making, and I can't expect them to be me. But I naturally just assume that everybody has that same experience or that same level, and it causes me to get frustrated with them, or it causes me to become impatient. So the first step in becoming an amazing leader is becoming self-aware, aware of what we bring to the organization positively, aware of what we can take away from it because of our weaknesses, aware of what our drives do to the company, how our values show up, but most of all, how all those things impact others. How are we, with all of our God-given gifts, negatively or positively impacting the organization? And I want us all to take some time, maybe after this podcast, and just write down, here's a list of my strengths, and here's a list of my weaknesses, and here's a list of my drives and my values. And just after each one of those, just write down, how does this affect other people? What are the pros of that? What are the cons of that? Because every strength and every weakness has a pro and it has a con.
And have you ever, like, you have a lot of people around you that will give you honest feedback. Is this, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, how you're impacting people, is this something you've gone and actually asked people in your organization, or you just kind of figured this out over time?
No, I have a strong desire to get feedback, both positive and negative. And I actually seek out negative because positive comes just anyway. Hey, you did a great job up there. My first question is, what could I have done better? Right? And having your peers, the people around you who are confident that they can raise their hand and say, I just want you to know that you kind of stepped all over that person, right? And I've had people in my organization, like David will come into my office the next day and say, hey, yesterday when you were having a conversation with this particular employee, I feel like it was a little uncalled for. And they're safe in saying that. And I can sit back and say, that makes sense. Get that person in here. Let me apologize. And they've seen me do it. I'll apologize to the people. I didn't understand. What I was really doing was moving quickly and focusing on the results. But the person walked out of the room with their tail between their legs, feeling deflated and unvalued.
And you had that kind of lapse in emotional intelligence there where you didn't recognize that impact on that person.
Because I was moving too quickly.
Yeah.
And being impatient and too focused on results.
I think a lot of people that don't have other leaders around them to kind of, like David does with you, kind of set you straight, you probably step in these potholes more where you don't even realize you're doing it.
Yep. Because we don't take the time to self-reflect, or we don't seek input from other people about how we're showing up or not showing up when it comes to things like self-awareness.
All right, so Ben, that's self-awareness. That's the first one. We're going to get into the next episode and talk about
self-regulation.
All right, we'll see you there. I am so glad we went deeper with Ben on self-awareness as a specific topic because, wow, there is a lot in there. Bob, you mentioned blind spots going into this conversation. What was your aha coming out of it?
My aha coming out of it is this idea that even our strengths can negatively impact the people around us as a leader. And I think most leaders, that's my strength, right? So everybody else around me's got to kind of get in line because I'm good at this thing. And I think Ben does a good job of kind of understanding that even his strengths can negatively impact people. And for me, I think throughout my career, that's maybe been a blind spot for me, right? This idea that I'm not going to not play to my strengths, right? But I have to be very aware of how that's impacting the people in my organization because most of us don't even think about it. It's just that's our strength and everybody else should get in line. So that's the thing that, there's always one of these things, Chad, that's like, man, it gets inside of you and you're just a little bit uncomfortable after hearing it. That's the thing that made me a little bit uncomfortable in this discussion.
That's powerful, Bob. Very, very powerful. And we want to help you. So we're going to give you top 5 ways to improve your self-awareness and increase your emotional intelligence. Number 1, don't make decisions in a bad mood. Number 1 is don't make decisions in a bad mood. Number 2, get out of your comfort zone. Number 3, identify your triggers. Number 4, do not judge your feelings. And number 5, don't make decisions in an extremely good mood either. So we want to make sure we've bookended that, right? Don't make decisions in a bad mood and don't make decisions when you're in an extremely good mood. you might not be making the best decisions. Get out of your comfort zone, identify your triggers, and don't judge the feelings that come along with those. We want to help continue as we grow our emotional intelligence. We want to help you continue in this conversation with us. So join us for the next episode where we will be discussing self-regulation in more detail with Ben as we continue this series on emotional intelligence. Until then, make sure you subscribe wherever it is you get podcasts from. You can always visit winmakegive.com for more information. And until then, remember, do good.